In today's video, I'm going to be showing the difference between the late 2010 13-inch MacBook Pro and the early 2011 MacBook Pro. Basically, I'm going to be talking about the system differences and the gaming potential on both of these laptops. Okay, so getting started, both of these laptops look almost exactly the same. There are no mechanical outside differences between the early or late 2010 and the early 2011 version. The only difference is there is a Thunderbolt icon on the mini display port. The later version does have Thunderbolt. Inside, the new version of the 13-inch MacBook Pro has a quad-core i5 at 2 gigahertz, I believe. This is a 2.4 gigahertz Core 2 Duo with only 2 cores. If you open it up, again, you're not going to be able to tell the difference without actually booting them up. The screens that I have on here are anti-glare screens. It was $20. You have to put them on yourself. Apple does not sell a matte display in the 13-inch, unfortunately, so that's really the only route you can go for a matte display. Now, the gaming performance of these laptops are somewhat different. The quad-core i5 on the new one has a lot more CPU power, whereas the 320M of the late 2010 version has a little bit more graphics power. Now, that's not to say that the older version is going to run circles around the new one, as the processing power of the new one is quite a bit different. But if you're really looking for graphics performance, the older version is much better. But then again, keep in mind that you're going to get a much powerful CPU on the new one, so you have to really weigh the pros and cons. The older version was rated for 10 hours of battery life. I can say that I can get at most 8 hours. Getting 10 hours is really quite difficult. I'd have to turn wireless off. I'd have to keep my display brightness really low and basically hardly touch it. The new one is rated for 7 hours, and that's because of the new CPU. And they made some improvements, but it's not the best. So 7 hours on the new one, 10 hours on the old one. If you need battery power, the older one is the way to go, assuming you can still get a newer one. If you were to purchase a used one that has a lot of load cycles on the battery, you're going to be looking at about the same for a brand new one. Now, performance-wise, let's compare. I have a Intel SSD in my older one. There is a standard 320 gigabyte, 7200 RPM hard disk drive in the new one. So let's see the difference between boot up. 3, 2, 1. The older one being the one on the left with the blue screen. And there you go. So that one's up, and it even started later than the first one. Still going. Still going. And there, it's almost done. So boot up speed is not a substantial benchmark. However, it just goes to show how much faster an SSD is compared to the standard hard disk drive. Both shipped with 4 gigabytes of RAM. I believe the newer one runs 1333 megahertz. This one, the older one, only ran 1066 megahertz. So there is also that difference between the two. So this one's going to have a little bit more expensive RAM. This one's going to have slower RAM, but less expensive. I don't believe you're going to see a difference between the two speeds because they are so close. But you know, it depends on what your task is. If you use something that is very RAM intensive, maybe you will see a difference. So that's my review of the 2010 and the 2011 13-inch MacBook Pro. Highly suggest either of them. They're both very powerful, and you know, give me a thumbs up if you like this video, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.